Yeah.
we start. So first, thank you very much, Sarah, for the interview. I have seen that you also have been an athlete. You have been like a judo athlete. So one of the things I would like to say for this interview, that we are going to speak about visualization, and you have used visualization in your own practice as an athlete.
Yeah.
How was that experience? How was the experience as an athlete, as a judo?
Yeah. So for me, when I was a judo athlete, I used to visualize my techniques a lot, and I used to daydream about them a lot in in class, in school. So even though I was only training 2 or 3 times a week, I used to visualize it a lot, but nobody had taught me to do it. So I was just doing it very, very like unconsciously, but I was quite conscious that I was visualizing all the time, but I did not know that that's what was helping me to do better or to master my techniques. One of the things I used to do a lot was I used to visualize my games with specific opponents. And every time I felt like I was stuck in that visualization, I would go and ask my coach how to, what would I do if I was in this situation. And I think that's what really helped me to be a tactical player, like knowing what to do in the situations that you've never experienced. Because if you have never experienced it, you will not know it. But if you visualize about it, at some point, your imagination will create that situation where you'll be stuck at some point, anything you visualize about. So for me, I used to visualize playing against a lot of different athletes and executing my technique on different athletes. And every time I would be stuck, that's how I would go and ask my coach and then practice that, so
it was a kind of an anticipation. You anticipate
yeah.
what is going to happen by the visualization.
Yeah, it was a strong anticipation. And the other thing was, I was very small in my weight category. I was tiny. I'm only 5'2", and I was playing open weight categories a lot of the times. So I had very big, players to play against who were tall, who were stronger, who were taller than me and bigger than me. So for me, I had to really know what I was doing, otherwise I would be out of the competition very easily. So every time I would get anxious about playing big people, I used to start visualizing how I'm going to, be fast on my feet, how I'm going to execute my technique, what grips I'm going to use. And I think for me, that was when I realized that I'm visualizing, I was doing it so unconsciously, I didn't know that I was doing it.
And later on, you study a Master of Science in Sports Psychology in Bristol University, it was?
Yeah. So I studied at the University of the West of England in Bristol. And I studied my master's in sports and exercise psychology. So when I studied that, and when I started, researching more, when I was studying my psychology degree back in India, I started researching more into sports psychology because that's what I wanted to do. And that's when I realized that visualization was a technique. And for me, I think it was so surprising that it's a technique. I thought everybody does it. And I thought like everybody would normally visualize. Like I didn't know that it was such a special skill. And
So,
I didn't know, that you could learn it,
Yeah. So not everyone knows about how to do it, the visualization. So it's a skill that it could be learned and it could be developed.
Yes, it's definitely a skill that can be learned because everybody knows that they visualize. They just don't pay attention to it. They just don't have the awareness that they're visualizing. Like when I was competing, I didn't know that I was visualizing, but I was. So I think all athletes do. Everybody has the ability to visualize. Anybody can do it. It's just about believing that the technique is going to help you. And I think all the scientific knowledge, that research brings in and sports psychology research brings in is to convince people that it works.
One of the things that I love in the workshop that I learned with you, it was all the scientific background that is supporting the visualization. When you were explaining the scientific background, I was like, wow, this is very good. This is why I get so interested as well in doing the interview. One of the things in all, there were several things in the scientific background, very interesting. One of the things was the neuronal path that you develop in the visualization, how that works, because from all of them, this one I think for me was like so interesting how it works, this kind of neuronal part.
Yeah, so neuroplasticity is basically a process by which your neurons multiply, okay, and new neural pathways are built in your brain. Now, if you do something constantly, like if you build a habit, or even if you learn a physical technique, your neural pathway is becoming stronger. So when we do repetitions of one particular technique in any sport, we are building that neural pathway, and that becomes your muscle memory. But what people don't realize is that when you're visualizing as well, your mind cannot tell whether that's real or whether that's imagination. Now, because your mind cannot tell that it is an imagination, it's still building the same neural pathway that it would build if you did the thing physically. And I think for me, that really made sense, because I would not train as much as other athletes were training. I was only training 2 or 3 times a week, but I was defeating athletes who were training 2 times a day. So for me, I could not believe how I was doing it, but I think as much as I would work on my techniques, with repetitions and continuous repetitions, I would also be visualizing a lot. Like I would be visualizing the advanced of those techniques already, so that even if I've not faced that situation in training, when I come to competition, my mind is prepared for it. And I think that whole neuroplasticity thing, like that building that neural pathway, made a lot of sense, because the other thing I used to visualize was winning. I used to always visualize myself winning with knockouts. So when I was visualizing before my competition and I was visualizing, completing and executing my technique, it was always the perfect technique. It was always the perfect knockout, and I had no fear for going, I had no fear going into my competition if I was thinking that I'm going to win with a knockout. And most of my competitions and bouts would last only 5 to 10 seconds. So, and I think I didn't realize how amazing that was until very recently. Like I used to never think that was a big deal, because I'd done it in my mind so many times that when I actually did it, it wasn't a big deal, because I was constantly doing it. And other people would be in awe of it, like, oh my God, that's so amazing. But for me, it felt very natural, because I had done it in my mind so many times that my body or my mind didn't feel like it was something new.
So it is another thing is very useful, for example, for confidence, for if you go to face some challenge, to visualize that you have been successful. That challenge could be very useful for going with more confidence.
Yeah, definitely. So positive visualization is one of those visualizations where you imagine a positive outcome. Every time you feel anxious, you only imagine the positive outcome. So what you're then doing is every time you're anxious, you're converting that anxiety and you're mentally using it to, go ahead and feel more confident. So you're almost converting that anxiety into confidence through your visualizations.
This is very interesting. This is very interesting, because it's like you are converting it. You are not like rejecting it, because sometimes when you are with anxiety, no, I don't want to be with anxiety.
Yeah.
And you went in a loop, because you don't want it and you get it, and so you are more and more anxiety. But if you are converting, it's like you are not rejecting, you are using it in some kind of way.
You're accepting it. Yeah, you're accepting it. And I think all of us feel anxiety. Some of us are more aware of it than other people. Some of us manage it better than other people. You know, so I don't think anxiety is a bad thing. I used to be very anxious, I think, before my judo competitions. And I know a lot of amazing athletes who are very anxious before competition or before a big presentation, even, you know, at work. But if you know how to use it in your favor, you know, then you are not going to have a nervous breakdown before competition, but you have to start using it every day when you feel anxious about that event. So it's not just about doing it before the competition, but it's doing every time you think that you're anxious about the competition. Because the moment you know there's a competition coming up, you have a little bit of anxiety already. You're already preparing in your mind, you know, you're preparing for it. So for me, the moment I knew I had a competition, every single day that I felt nervous, I would translate that and, you know, use that anxiety to visualize and then think what could go wrong, because anxiety is the fear of unknown. So when you have the fear of unknown, which is anxiety, you just think, what is that unknown? And you just visualize what is going to come, you know, and whatever comes to your mind either will be, if it's something good, you know, when you're visualizing, brilliant, it's making you feel more confident. If it's something that's blocking you, then you have the time to go and train and, you know, do something about it. So either way, it's going to work.
Yes, or it could be like the positive outcome, or it could be like anticipation of the challenge and how to work with it. Very interesting. This is one of the things, because, for example, the visualization, one of the different contexts of sports that I have seen like very useful, for example, that it was quite similar in job interviews, for example, when you interview, how to deal with that, it could be very, very useful. So when I was watching the workshop, I was thinking this kind of techniques for job interviews, very useful, because it's the same. You are facing one moment that is going to be like definitive. So this boost of confidence, or this anticipate what is coming, could be very useful for these situations.
Definitely. And I think when you're performing anything, all you need is a presence of mind, you know, to be present with whatever's happening and being fully present, which we call mindfulness. But the thing is, if you have built up anxiety, you know, if that anxiety has built up to that point and you've suppressed it and you've not done anything about it, then you're not going to be very present in the moment. Then you're going to be thinking about the outcome, you know, all the time. So you've got to make sure you prepare well in advance for it. In terms of a job interview, I think the one mistake that people make is that they answer too quickly.
Answer too quickly.
Yeah, they answer too quickly. They're too eager to answer, you know. And I think the one thing about a job interview is listening to the question. That's the one thing that people fail to do when they're preparing for job interviews. Instead of actually answering or wanting to impress, if you just take a step back and listen to what your interviewer is asking you, what are they looking for? And generally, you can tell by their expressions. You can tell when you focus on their face, you focus on their eyes, and you listen to their tone, really take it in, you will know what they're looking for. So, and it's the same in sport, because, and I know this because in judo, you play against an opponent. When you see them outside of the mat, when you see them when they're on the mat with you, you know how confident they are. You know when you've shaken them up, you know? So I think reading people, you know, is also an important skill. But if you're anxious, if you have real, you know, self-doubt, then you're not going to be able to be present in that moment. So visualization helps to prepare and to make you feel confident and to make you feel like, to allow you to believe in yourself to get to that point. After that, it's just presence of mind, you know, being present. So
there is a lot of interesting things about what you have done. It has came to my mind when you have spoken about reading people, and in the judo, I don't know if you know David Matsumoto, I think it's called, from Humintel, the company. Is one of the experts in micro expressions, facial expressions. He's a doctor in psychology, and he was training of the judo team, a national judo team.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
National judo team. Wow, to
Yeah,
read
yeah, yeah.
people. That's really
Yeah,
amazing. That's so
he's
interesting.
black belt in judo, and
Yeah.
he's training his I think national team. I don't know now if he's in his States now in United States, and I don't know if he
Wow.
was involved with them. But yeah, David Matsumoto, I think is called. Yeah, from Humintel. Yeah, and
Wow.
very interesting. Very interesting field. And also the mindfulness. One of the things that when I saw the workshop, I was thinking about the interview.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about which could be the purpose of visualization. No,
Mm-hmm.
why I can use visualization, or what for. One of the things was confidence, that I think it could be useful in all the areas in your life, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I thought I have to ask about that is about the
Yeah.
flow. You mentioned the flow state of, and
Yeah.
I have been reading quite a lot
Mm-hmm.
of flow of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all about the flow
Yeah.
meditation in sports as well. So I
Yeah.
was very interested about how do you use visualization for
Yeah.
this kind of flow state.
So, as I said, visualization is preparation, and then it's mindfulness is the next step. So, as long as you're visualizing constantly about what you are going to do, and you're feeling comfortable with it, you need to feel comfortable with what you are visualizing. If there is no comfort in that, and if it's always very, blurry, it's always very kind of, you don't have enough belief in your visualization, then you're not going to be able to be present with when you come to that point of that event. Now, flow state is something where you are fully engaged in an activity, and you have no kind of awareness of time. You have no awareness of what's happening around you. You're just really into it. Like when you're training in sports, flow states are very common to experience because you are just literally flowing in that moment without any kind of fear, without any kind of conscious effort. It's so like subconscious, it's almost like, oh my God, that just happened. Wow. Um, in order to be in that state of mind, firstly, you need to know what you're going to do. There needs to be a preparedness for everything. You need to be prepared for what's coming to you. So visualization helps you with that. When it comes to mindfulness meditation, that helps you with what's happening to you in the moment. So when you practice mindfulness meditation, you become aware of your body, you become aware of your body sensations. So the internal environment is what you need to be aware of in order to respond to situations in the moment and to be fully present in the moment. So when you're in your flow state and say something is going wrong or something is not happening the way you want, you can still be in that flow state as long as you realize that that your internal environment is kind of in that flight or fight response mode because you're about to give up, or like, you're feeling really down. And that flow state helps you to bring yourself back in, even in the toughest times. Now, a lot of the times athletes come out of that flow state when things go wrong, when they're in a crisis situation. So mindfulness meditation allows you to be comfortable with the discomfort. It's about, so when you're meditating and you say, for example, think about a situation where, you're in a crisis, say on the pitch, on the court, on the mat, and you bring your attention back to your body, and you will know what that stress response feels like in your meditation. Now, if you know what that stress response feels like in your body, you can practice outside of training. You can practice how to bring yourself back using your breathing, using your mind's anchoring power, grounding power, and you focus on your body sensations, your breathing, and you bring yourself back up. You bring yourself back to normal awareness in a normal state. Now, if you don't know that you're having a stress response and you've never felt that before, then you are going to struggle when you're on the court or on the field or in a stress, situation. So mindfulness meditation really helps to know what's happening within you and to bring you back in that flow state. But if you are not aware of your body and your breathing and your mind, which most athletes are quite aware of, as athletes, sports people, they're very aware of their bodies, their mind. They have a deeper sense of awareness. So they already have that, but they don't practice enough being in a crisis situation. Because if you don't play enough competitions, if you're not somebody who's looking for challenges all the time, then you're not going to put yourself in those situations. Or sometimes you might not have the opportunity to be in a crisis situation. Your training might be stagnant, or your coach might not be challenging you, or you're just not feeling up to it. You're happy with where you are. But when you start practicing mindfulness meditation, you want to be able to feel what you are like in a stressful situation. And your body is the first thing that responds to stress. Before your mind realizes, your body automatically has a response. There's a biochemical response in your body, in your breathing. And if you can recognize that, if your awareness is so good that you recognize that immediately, then before it goes further and before it intensifies, you are already addressing it because you're aware of it.
Yeah.
But if you're not aware, then you can't address it.
Very interesting. It has come to my mind when you have told me about the be comfort with the discomfort. It came to me as I told you the ultra marathons. We have been running a little bit of ultra marathons with a friend of mine who is very good running ultra marathons. And when I was in the middle of the ultra marathons, in this moment is when you have to like go back to the flow, because you are in a very bad situation, physically and mentally as well. And I was thinking how visualization could be useful for that, useful for being able to manage and also the mindfulness, being able to manage these feelings and this also my inner dialogue that in that moment is quite strong.
Yeah, I think for ultra marathons, chronic fatigue is one of the biggest, fatigue is like one of the biggest barriers for ultra marathoners, or even people who are trying to run a marathon. So one thing to be aware of with, doing such huge races, long races, which need and require a lot of mental strength, is to understand that there needs to be a very personal sense of purpose. So it's not simply to complete it, but there is this inner kind of purpose that you have to be better than what you were. And that purpose exceeds everything else. So you can only do an ultra marathon or even train for it if you have that very deep sense of wanting to be better, than what you were. And there is also a very, a kind of like a negative point of that, which is exercise addiction. So a lot of marathon runners and a lot of runners in general suffer from exercise addiction, which means if they don't run even one day, they can't function. They feel frustrated, they feel angry, and it's like an addiction for them, just like having sugar or having a cigarette.
There is also the biochemical component in the body, that also all the biochemical and the hormone system that is working with the running, that if you stop it, some people wants to feel this kind of, or adrenaline or this kind of feelings in the body.
Yeah, definitely, because you get a rush when you run, isn't it? You get these endorphins in your body and you feel a sense of relief. It's like once you're tired, you're fine, So some people use it to cope with their anxiety. So when you're running an ultra marathon, you need to, be sure that you have a very personal sense of purpose. You're not just doing it because other people are doing it. It's not something, playing football, when you're a kid, playing football is something you can do, or running a 5K is something you can do just because other people are doing it. But when you're training for a marathon or like an ultra marathon, you need to have a very strong sense of inner purpose when it comes to that. So
it's for example, one of the things that you have told and it resonates a lot in me, it was to challenge yourself, that to put yourself totally out of your comfort zone, trying to to break all kind of inner limits of being in a very uncomfortable place, and then be comfortable, be used to being there for improving yourself. I think this is one of the things. It happened to me the same with fighting sports that I was doing when I was in the uni. When I yesterday I went to train. I was with a friend of mine, and we were speaking about that. I didn't like to go to the ring to fight. If you ask 10 minutes before, do you want to stay here? I said, no way, I want to go home. But it was the challenge of breaking this and going and performing, doing well. But it was for me the best thing, because it took the best from myself.
Yeah.
So very happy with that. And how visualizations help can help performing people. You have spoken about as well about in critical situations. And also, I'm because I'm working in acute medical unit in a hospital, it came to mind, it could be very useful also for being ready for stressful situations that sometimes it happens and an emergency happens and people have to react quite in a very good performance. So it could be very useful for this kind of environments.
Of course. A lot of doctors, nurses, they should be meditating anyway, because their jobs are very stressful. And I have friends who are doctors who, have 12-hour shifts, especially during COVID, 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, sometimes night shifts of 12 hours, And I think when you are, in an emergency unit or emergency situation, or a paramedic even, I think what you need to learn to do is step away from your thoughts and feelings. You almost step away from it. There is this kind of gap, between your thoughts and feelings and you. And that is like your higher consciousness or your higher self. And mindfulness meditation is something that can help you with that, being able to step back. Because when you have traumatic situations constantly, and when you start meditating, those traumatic situations come back in your meditation. So when those traumatic situations are coming back, you have the time to accept them, and then step back from it. But till the time you don't fully accept that that's happened and, fully become aware of it and allow yourself to feel all the things you felt, even when it's uncomfortable, you won't be able to learn how to step back from your thoughts and feelings. So when it comes to emergency situations, being mindful in those situations, the main thing is you need to meditate every day, because every single day something happens that you need to release from your system, like you need to let go of it.
When that's for my understanding and for understanding of the people, when you say step back from your thoughts and your feelings, it's a kind of disassociation. You disassociate yourself a little bit of your feelings and your thoughts.
I think you don't disassociate with them, you just observe them from a distance. So it's almost like you're not rejecting them, you're not ignoring them, you are fully aware of them, but you're able to observe it from a little bit of a distance in your mind. It's literally when you start meditating on a regular basis, you need to meditate for some time to get to that point where you almost understand these are just my thoughts and feelings. They're so temporary, and then it makes you laugh, because it's like, oh my God, I was upset about this. It was so temporary, because nothing is permanent. So whatever your thoughts and feelings are all temporary things that your mind is doing and your body is doing, so your mind is thinking and your body is feeling it. But when you understand that you're more than just your mind and body, like your brain and your body, you can only understand that through spirituality. So you can only understand that through meditation and understanding that you are more than that, And I think most doctors have that sense of, or medical professionals have that sense that they are more than just the body and the mind, because they've seen so many emergency situations, deaths, like around them, that they have to kind of almost have to have a spiritual outlook to survive and go back in there after a traumatic situation. If you didn't have that spiritual, growth and development, or that spiritual side of you, then you might not be able to go back to that situation if you were too human, So there is this idea of, you are human, but then there's also that spiritual side where you're not as human, and I think meditation helps you to recognize the two parts of you. So your human self is directly in contact with the experience. Your higher self or your higher consciousness is still in contact with the experience, but from a bigger outlook, from a bigger view, from like a little bit of space. It's like watching, it's like being in. So if I was to go for a walk, so it's like I'm in the forest, I am taking a walk, I can see all these trees around me. Now your higher self will look at you taking that walk. So your higher self is almost like observing you in front of you taking that walk. So there's that distance, So your higher self can see all the trees and you at the same time. Whereas when you are your human self, you can only see what's around you. You can't see the whole picture. You can't experience the wholeness of the situation. But when you become more aware, you expand your awareness to a level that develops your higher self. And then your higher self can see the whole picture. So it's not so your feelings and thoughts become very small in that bigger picture. That's why you're able to step back.
It is very interesting. There are two things. One, I was thinking when you spoke about that, some kind of experience that it happened when I was running with my friend doing the trail running, with the contact with the nature and with the ocean and and it was this kind of feeling and we spoke a lot about the spiritual side and this kind of feelings. So very interesting. And also one question: this kind of high conscience can be you can contact more with that, with the mindfulness and with visualizations. You can be more in contact with this part that we have inside.
Yeah, I think mindfulness meditation is one of the main things, because when you are practicing mindfulness meditation, you are observing your inner existence. You're not looking outside, you're closing your eyes, you're sitting still, and you're just observing your body, you're observing your body sensations, your breath. So that is when you become, one with that higher self or that higher consciousness. Because most of the times we look outside for solutions, and we think that our problems come from outside, so we can look for solutions outside. But everything outside of us is not in our control. But yet we still keep looking outside for all our solutions. The only things that are in your control is your thoughts, your emotions, and your behavior. Those are the only three things you can control. You have complete control over, almost, even that you have to learn to master. So it'll take you your whole life to learn and master those things. And I believe that no matter how much money you have or how many titles you've achieved, whatever you've achieved, if you've not learned to master those three things, then you haven't mastered life. Then there's no point in living this life, because the moment you realize that those are the only three things you can control in your life, firstly, that realization comes, very late for most of us. It only comes, that realization comes through meditation. Because how many, like, your brain is a machine, right? When do you actually rest it? Because even when you're sleeping, you are thinking. Your thoughts are not stopping when you sleep, so even your body is resting when you're sleeping. But when is your mind able to kind of, rest? So when you practice mindfulness meditation, you rest your mind and you allow whatever thoughts, feelings, and emotions that want to resurface, you allow them to resurface. It's almost like, doing like a backup or like a cleanse of your computer. It's almost like cleaning your mind in some ways, cleaning your inner being, your inner environment. So when do you do that? So one part of mindfulness meditation is resting meditation, where you're just resting, you're just still, you're just allowing anything that wants to resurface in your mind for it to resurface. so that it doesn't resurface when you're in traumatic situations, so that those inner negative experiences don't become magnified when you're in other negative experiences. Because your mind is associating, again, it's neuroplasticity, it's that neural pathway of negative experiences that is becoming very activated when you're constantly putting yourself in that situation. Now, if you practice mindfulness meditation every day, even if you do just the resting part of the meditation, which is just relaxing your mind and focusing, observing your breathing and allowing whatever thoughts and feelings need to resurface, then every day you're doing a little bit of a cleanse to break that neural pathway from building up. You're building a new neural pathway, which is allow every day, just allow it to resurface and go away. And see the bigger picture, like expand your awareness, see the bigger picture, and then your thoughts and feelings become very small in that picture. So when you expand your awareness, your thoughts and feelings become very less intense, and when you then put yourself into new negative experiences, you are aware of that experience. You're not associating it with past experiences. That's why you're fully present, because nothing else is interfering with your current experience. Because there are two things we have. One is memory. We have great memory. And the other thing we have is imagination. But these two things always tend to work, against us. Because our memory interferes with our current experience. And then we imagine that it will always be negative. And that's how we build dysfunctional neural pathways or unhelpful belief systems, in more psychological terms. So if we just meditate and we allow those things to pass, and we understand that those were just temporary experiences, that's not what life is all about. Then when we go into new situations, we are more aware because there's nothing interfering. So that's how it works. It's a whole cycle,
Yeah, it's very interesting. There are two questions here. One, if it's every day, how long every day could be enough for having like a good rest of the brain and the thoughts?
Yeah.
And how long every day?
So when you learn meditation, so I learned meditation at a Vipassana center, which was a 10-day meditation retreat where you don't talk and you meditate for hours and hours a day, and you don't read, you do nothing. So that's how I learned meditation, where I learned to sit in meditation for an hour. And then when I came back, I meditated for an hour for quite some time, for 3 to 4 months, meditating an hour a day. But that is when you learn the technique. The technique itself takes so much time to learn, So when you're learning the technique, you want to start small, because if you're doing it in everyday life, like unlike me going to a retreat and doing it, if you're doing it in everyday life, I think 20 minutes is good to aim for.
20 minutes.
But yeah, 20 minutes. So you can start with 10 minutes, then you can go into 20 minutes, then you can build to 30 minutes, then you can build to 40 minutes. Once you have learned the technique, and you will know when you have learned it, you will know that you're able to do this, once you've learned the technique, then your mind will tell you when it's time to stop, when you have processed everything, So some days there can be times when once you've learned the technique, you can meditate for 40 minutes sometimes you may just meditate for 20 minutes. So, but learning the technique is important, and knowing what meditation is, because there are so many layers to human beings, There are these layers and layers and layers of experiences we have. They're not just sensory experiences anymore. They're much deeper than that. And then your mind breaks it back down into sensory experiences. So it's like a whole cycle that you have to go through in order to learn how to meditate first. And then once you start meditating, you know how long you need to meditate for. So I don't think you can prescribe. It's so subjective, it's so subjective. You cannot really prescribe someone that, this much meditation will help you, because if that person is not doing it right, it's not going to help them. If that person is doing it with an aim of their life becoming completely fine after that, it's not going to help them, because your life is not going to change by meditating. A lot of people think meditation is like this blissful experience. It isn't. It is an exercise, it's resting and exercising your mind, and there are ways to do that. So it's not like everything is going to be fine once you start meditating. You're just dealing with it so much better. Your ability, your awareness improves so much that you are just dealing with situations in a calm and collected and composed manner, so there is no real prescription. I mean, I always tell people to start with 10 to 15 minutes, but aim for at least 30 minutes of meditation, because sometimes there will be times when it takes you just 10 minutes to get into the meditation, to start, allowing, to start accepting, to relax your mind and be in that state of mind where you're, doing the mental exercise. But if they're not able to do that, most people don't even stick to a routine to do that. But I have actually helped so many athletes. I am surprised by it. I'm surprised how many athletes, all my athletes meditate, and they're teenagers. They're not adults, they're teenagers. So teenagers who are athletes, who are always thinking about winning, and they're like always hyper and very forceful in some ways, very enthusiastic. They meditate before bed for 10 to 15 minutes at least. And now they're like, I can't go to sleep without meditation, That's what they come back and tell me. So if teenagers can meditate for 10 to 15 minutes every day, I'm sure adults can do that, But because it becomes uncomfortable at some point to sit still, people give up, and then they give up and they say, oh, it didn't work for me. But you didn't even give it a go,
Yes.
That's like saying, I'm going to run for 1 month, and then if I can't run 20 kilometers, I'm just going to give up. It didn't work for me. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Meditation is a marathon.
It's the same. It's to be comfortable with the discomfort. At the beginning, it's going to be discomfort, and you have to learn how to be comfortable in this situation. Even the inside mind, that when it comes the thoughts or the feelings that you, or the body posture that you are not comfortable with, that learn how to be comfortable with this.
And all the discomfort is inside you. There is no discomfort outside, because there is no human experience outside of this body and this mind.
Very interesting.
There is no human experience. Everything is outside of you. So if you cannot go within and face that discomfort within, then you cannot face the discomfort that's coming. Then you're going to have fears of things going wrong, because you don't know what discomfort feels like. Once you become calm, while you feel that discomfort that comes, when your past experiences are resurfacing, when you are becoming aware of your fears, that you've held on for so long, and allowing them to go is very difficult, because you think those fears are helping you. But none of those fears actually were helping you. They were just there temporarily in certain situations that they helped you. But we hold on to those beliefs and fears, and then we use them every day, and we generalize and we live through those beliefs and those fears. So you need to understand that there is no such fear in the present moment. It's just an internal experience or a memory or an imagination. That's it. It's one of those two things, and then that's making you think and feel something. Then you are remembering it, registering it, that internal discomfort. It's all internal. It's not external. We just live those experiences again and again because of our memory, because of our imagination. The experience is not real. They're just in your mind.
It's very interesting. So you will say that working with visualizations and mindfulness will be the perfect mix for this kind of being ready, being confident, being in the moment, being with the flow state, will be the perfect combination.
Yeah, I think those two things are the biggest things, because mindfulness allows you to release past memories. Once you've released that past memory, there is a little bit of emptiness in your mind about that situation. And that's when you visualize to fill that emptiness, because if you let go of a belief, if you let go of all the beliefs, all the attachments, then sometimes you feel empty. and you feel like you need to have something there. So if you could choose and fill that space, you will fill it with beautiful things, isn't it? Why will you fill it with negative things? So
Yeah.
I think if you go to like a pure Buddhist monk, someone who's a Buddhist who's practicing Buddhism, they might not be using visualization. They might be, living in that non-attached, way, because that's their way of living. But when we are living in the real world and we want to achieve things, we want to provide for our family, we want to win these medals, we want to influence, we want to inspire. It's not that Buddhist monks don't inspire people, they do, because that's the hardest thing to do, is living without the attachments that fill up your ego, but when we want to do all the other things in life and we want to live and we have responsibilities, then the visualization helps. Then you don't feel too scared to let go of the old beliefs in your mindfulness meditation, because you know that then you have a choice to fill it up with whatever you want. So
that's very interesting. It's very interesting, and I'm going to wrap it up a little bit, because also when I have been researching about all of these things, it comes to me about the meditation, about the mindfulness, about all these states. And when I started to study coaching, for example, it was the goal setting, and it was like, in one way it was like nothing in your mind, in other way, no, you have to put the goal. And it was, how can I combine together, because I see both things very useful, but depending with who you are studying, it was like one thing on another, and I was thinking like, how can be both at the same time, and it's very interesting to use one for empty the mind and to put whatever you want, like goal setting or visualization in the mind there.
Yeah, because even when you visualize, sometimes you will have negative thoughts when you're visualizing. That's because you have not allowed yourself to process those negative thoughts. You have not meditated to allow them to go away. Once you meditate to allow those thoughts to go away, then when you visualize, you may not have, it takes time to let go. It takes time to meditate. It takes years. I've been meditating since 5 years and I still struggle. 5 years is nothing. But at least I know that I'm making more progress with my inner self, than what I would have if I had not meditated. So I think it's about knowing that it's a process of, kind of achieving and letting go, because the other things that athletes really struggle with is they try to achieve what they had achieved in the past. They try to get back to that, but you're not the same person that you were. So you need to start fresh, you need to learn something new. You need to get out of the box, and I think mindfulness meditation helps them to let go of their old achievements, old belief systems, old fears, allows them to accept it and allow it to pass, and not detach from it, but letting go of it, like releasing it emotionally and mentally. And then they're ready for the new. So a lot of athletes, when they're coming back from injuries, when they're coming back of a little brief retirement or break, they struggle because they're trying to get back to who they were. But you're not the same person anymore. So why are you trying to achieve something you'd achieved like 2 years ago or 6 months ago? Because now you should have new goals. You want to learn new things, because in the sporting world or even the corporate world, it's all about the money and the medals, but it's about your inner growth. If you focus on your inner growth, if that is your goal of doing anything in life, then you are going to grow, because that is your intention. That is your focus, And if you are growing internally, all the external things are going to be in place, because if you focus on it's like this, if you focus on your technique and you focus on your game and you forget winning, okay, and you just focus on your technique and your game, you will ultimately do well, isn't it? Because that's the main focus, because then you will play well, because you've been focusing on improving yourself. But if you keep focusing on winning, then you will calculate, you will manipulate, you will find the easy way out. And there is no easy way. You know, there is no easy way. You have to focus on the process. If the process is right, then the outcome will be what you want it to be. So
yeah, very interesting. One of the things that I have spoken with some people who compete is that winning is a consequence. It's a consequence of the goal.
It's a consequence.
It's not the goal. It's the consequence.
It's not the goal. Yeah.
It's the consequence of the goal. You know, you have a goal, you develop the goal, and winning is a consequence of this goal.
Exactly. And that's what people need to remember when they get. So when you are attached, you know, when you are attached to those past beliefs, I'm the champion, I'm the reigning champion, I should win, you know, then you will be focusing on the outcome. But if you forget, you know, if you forget about what your past achievements were and you just focus on, okay, I learned this technique, now I want to do something new this time, let's work on that, you know, and you're doing something new, you know, you're happy because you're doing something new. You're going to be unhappy if you are attached to your past, you know, to your past identities or past self-concepts that you have built through those beliefs. But if you are allowing it to go and you focus on your growth and you're excited about the sport, you know, and I always tell my athletes, if you're not excited about training, then you shouldn't be training. Do something that excites you about training, you know, because training has to be exciting. There has to be a purpose to every single training session that you do. It's not just go out and just do it. It's like there's a purpose to it, but you need a purpose every single day. You don't need a long-term purpose. That will happen anyway, but you need a purpose every single day to enjoy your training. And for me, when I was a judo player, I used to go to training. Sometimes I used to be the only one in the class because it was raining, you know, it was a holiday, so nobody was really coming for training. It was, you know, some festival, but I would still go to training. And I would still complete my 100 repetitions or 1,000 repetitions of whatever I wanted to do all by myself, you know, just shadow training, not even sometimes without a partner. And people never see that, you know, people think, oh, you're just talented, that's why you're winning. You're not talented, you're working hard. You know? And anybody can work hard. Anybody can work hard.
And there is a passion about the training, a passion about what you are doing. There is with the ultramarathon runner, he spoke to me a lot about the passion of running and the passion of being in the nature and running in the nature. There is something that this is the biggest motivation, inner motivation, the motor that gives you, you know, the oomph for going. So even if it's raining or if it's windy, if it's cold, you go and run.
And do it. Exactly. And I think because it makes you feel connected with your inner self. I think for a lot of athletes, when they run, especially running, swimming, you know, like a very that is a monotonous movement. Like running is a monotonous movement, you know. It's a closed skill thing. It's a closed skill. You're just running. So when you're running, because it's a repetitive movement, your associations with your inner self become very strong. You know, you allow this release, you're allowing because you're running. So it's very much like meditation, you know. So meditation can be a lot of things. Mindfulness meditation is just being aware of everything around you and within you. But when you keep running, you know, it's a very nice way of meditating because you're allowing your inner self to be released. You just allow, with every step you allow yourself, you know. Even with other sports, when you do something repetitively, repetitions, you know, that really helps your mind to allow because it becomes subconscious after a point. And when you do it subconsciously, you know, you allow your mind to think. You're not consciously aware, and you're just allowing your mind to think whatever thoughts. It's like driving, you know, when you go out driving, you really enjoy it, don't you, once in a while? Like, you just really enjoy the drives when you go for long drives because you're not thinking, you're just doing it, and you're allowing your mind to just do whatever it wants while you're still being able to drive. And that is why I think running is such a, you know, amazing thing. Any sport really, it allows you to meditate. That is the meditation.
Very good. So thank you very much. It has been very interesting. It has been a great conversation. I have a lot of takeaways of the conversation of today. A lot of visualization, a lot of meditation, a lot of mindfulness, and the science behind of it, that is very, very interesting. And also how useful could be in sports, but also in the other areas in your life. So thank you very much.
You are welcome.